So today, our new order goes into effect, and it's Stay Safe, Ohio. And this is something that we have talked about. Not much new in there, really, that we had not already talked about here, that John and I had talked about, and Dr. Acton. But I do want to indicate that the name, because the name is important. Stay Safe, Ohio, not a stay-at-home order. And so we've reached a new stage, and I think that's good news for everybody. Doesn't mean the virus has gone away. Doesn't mean we don't have to exercise good judgment. Doesn't mean the basic principles that we've been talking about don't still apply. They very, very much still apply. Distance is probably the most important. Wearing some facial covering if you're out in public is certainly good practice. Sanitation, the things that we all have been talking about, those things still very, very much apply. Every Ohioan has to make their own decision based on their medical condition, based on a lot of things, who they're taking care of. So these are individual decisions, but there is a reason. It's no longer a stay-at-home order. It is a Stay Safe Ohio order. And again, we need to do those things that we need to do. The virus is, as I said, still very, very much out there. But let me kind of recap and talk about a few things in this order. As I said, we've talked about this before. I don't think there's much new really in here or any huge surprises. First of all, it does have a date, an expiration date of May 29th. You should not read anything really into that, because a lot of things we're going to be doing in the month of May as we open things up in May. We're going to talk about these in a minute. So the order itself will be superseded as we issue new orders throughout the month. You just have to put a date on it. Didn't want to put an unending date. We wanted to have a date certain. But as I said, things will change, so no one should be too fixated on whatever that date is. A lot of things, I said, will happen during the month of May. We will open a number of things up in Ohio. And I want to talk about how we're doing this, because the how is very important. And this is something that I have learned to do and found to be so very, very helpful for almost the last decade, starting when I became Attorney General of Ohio. And that is, I always figure there's people out here who know a lot more than I do, and we try to bring them together. And so what we have done, and we'll go through each one of these things that we're going to be opening up, but in each case, we brought together people who know that particular industry, know that particular business, know that particular trade, people who do this themselves. For example, we put together a group to look at, when and how we can safely open our barbershops. We brought people together who, that's what they do, whether it's a small shop, big shop. We've brought them together, and they're starting these conversations and carrying that on. So bringing people together who understand how you run it, how you can practically run it, and do things as safely as humanly possible. And that's what our goal is in bringing all these folks together. Why is that important? Let me talk a moment about that. And why do we do it that way? A couple of things are obvious. We want to keep employees safe who are working in these businesses. Number two, for those businesses that have customers that come in, we want to keep those customers safe. And the third thing is, if that business is going to thrive, if people are going to come in, if customers are going to be there, people have to feel, public has to feel that every precaution is being taken, every safety measure is being taken, because everybody knows the virus is still out there. It's not gone away. But having that public confidence is absolutely essential for businesses to be able to come back and to make it. And so the how of how we roll this out is so very, very important. We have to engender confidence and let people know that it is safe. It is safe, as safe as it can be made. Fire's still there, but it's as safe as it can be made to go back out and go to restaurants or whatever the case may be. So I want to go through this kind of the timeline here a little bit. Today, as we indicated, hospitals, dentists, veterinarians are much more fuller open, kind of bad English, but they're much more open, and are pretty much doing what they were doing before the coronavirus came on the scene. And so that starts today. People will have the opportunity to catch up on some things that from the medical point of view have been postponed. And again, I would emphasize some of these things have not been ever stopped, but we've seen a downtick. Well baby clinics, people getting checkups, those have gone down. They don't have to go down. We would encourage people to kind of catch back up on where you need to be from a medical point of view. On Monday, this coming Monday, offices, industry, construction, those that are not open will be allowed open. Again, I think you're going to see many companies with offices are going to continue to have people work from home. Again, we put a group together. This one was led by Frank Sullivan and a number of business men, women across the state of Ohio. They came up with the best practices. These best practices will now apply to any of these companies that have been open. Some were deemed essential. That designation is now gone. And as everybody starts back, everybody will have these same guidelines, best practices, so that we can do everything we can to ensure the employees are in fact safe. So that's Monday. May 12th is retail. And we're also doing something right now. And this is really as a result of requests by retailers who said, look, I got some critical days coming up. Some things are happening, and this is a good time for us to make sales. So can you let us schedule appointments? So we're letting people schedule appointments. Retail can do that. If it's like a jewelry store or something like that, where it would make sense to do a furniture store, they can do that, and they can do that by appointment right now. And you'll be hearing, I'm sure, in advertising from different companies about that. So that is something they can do. Curbside, John talked about that, I think, the other day. They can do curbside if that retail business lends itself to that type of activity. But we also have put together working groups to, again, the same principle, taking business people, health people, putting them together, and letting them come up with best practices that actually will work. And so we have a restaurant group that I believe is having calls this weekend, John? Started today. We have a hair group. We're all ready for that, I think. They are starting to work and pulling together. We miss our libraries, and so we're putting people, librarians and others, to take a look at this. How could this work? Travel and tourism would be another working group being put together. Outdoor recreation, another working group that we are putting together, again, from people who understand those industries. Sports, adult sports, youth sports, another group. Our gyms. I know many people go to gyms, they miss their gym. Putting a working group together. Theater and arts is another one. Professional sports is another one. Child care is another one. We hear, obviously, we're hearing a lot about that. Working group coming together for that. Adult daycare. And there will be more. Now, some of these will come on fairly quickly. We're looking for restaurants. Once we get the best practices up, we'll set the date. We're going to do the same thing for hair and set a date. And again, the goal is to take people who understand that work, put them together with other experts, come up with a way that will actually work, best practices, so when you go into that place, you know that the best practices are in fact being followed. My fellow Ohioans, we can do two things at once. We can do it. We can stay safe. We can protect each other. We can protect our most vulnerable, and at the same time, move our business back and get people back to work. Let me be real candid. To be able to do this and to continue to move forward in the way that we want to do and not have to backtrack, I need your help. I don't think that's going to be hard. Ohioans have done an amazing job in coming together, amazing job in, as Dr. Atkins says, flattening the curve, staying home, doing things that matter. Distance, the most important, and masks, doing other things. So we need to continue to do these things. We need to continue to be careful. We need to continue to look out for people who are more vulnerable, people who have a medical problem, people who are over 60, 65 years of age. And again, that is a responsibility that each one of us has as we go through this. So all the things that we have been doing. So we're on two tracks. And if we can do this, continue doing what you have been doing, we will make it, and things will continue to be able to be opened up. We won't have to backtrack. We don't want a huge spike where we have a huge problem and we have to go deal with that. We're going to watch the health numbers. You know, one of the key indicators is hospitalizations. We're going to actually move these charts, not today, I don't think, but what we want you to see and what I want to see every day is maybe a 20-day or 30-day model, so we can just see where things are going. We'll keep the same other ones that you've been seeing, the 5-day, but we want to kind of get the big picture as we move forward. And if we can keep those numbers down, we're going to rock and roll. We'll keep moving. I know this is tough. And I don't want to get too emotional, but Fran and I have 24 grandchildren. We have 8 children. We miss being able to go see them. We have 4 that live close to us. We walk over there and we kind of wave through the window or stand way back. But we can't hug them. We can't get in the car and go see some of the other ones who are a ways away. This is not easy. It's not easy for any of us. But this is not going to last forever. Encouraging news. I'm not the doctor. I'm not going to get into how fast we'll have a vaccine, but people are working frantically to do it. So this is not going to last forever. And we have to continue to do what we need to do. I get it. I understand that there are some of you out there who think we're not moving near fast enough. There's some of you out there who think just the opposite. He's going much too fast. We're trying to get it right. We're trying to do 2 things at once. We're trying not to have to go back, roll the clock back, regress. We want to always continue to move forward. We brought other things into play that we didn't have before. We've got the testing. We'll talk about the testing on Monday and outline exactly how this testing and what it's going to enable us to do. And it's a tool. No more than a tool, but a very significant tool. The tracing. These things are all important. What is important, and again, I would ask you all to remember, is that we are all in this together. And what each one of us does not only impacts us, our families, but in many cases, total strangers, people we don't even know. And so whether we like it or not, we are in this together. And our collective actions matter a great deal. And I don't have any doubt that you understand that, because I know this is what you have been doing. So we got to stay together. We are one state. Look, I know some folks have suggested, well, if we take this county and the numbers here in this county aren't as bad, or this is a more rural county, or this. Once you start down that pathway, there's no stopping and there's no end to it. And then all you end up doing, the county that opens back up more, there's a rush of people from other counties. Take an urban county, then it's got a rural county very close. People are going to roll from that into that rural county if it is opened up. It would be a disaster for this state. The end is in sight. The end is in sight. We see daylight. Not the end of the virus, but the ability to get back to normal. Now, I went through that long list. There are some things that are not going to happen as soon as others. And I think you kind of know what those are. Things that we can't control, distancing. Things where we're bringing large groups of people together. Let me just say something again about that. You know, if we start doing that, it's not good. And so we got to continue to stay focused, continue to stay disciplined, and we can do that and start our businesses back up and get people to work. There is a cost. There's a medical cost, there's a social cost when an economy goes down as fast as this economy has gone down because of the coronavirus. We know that. And we also know that no matter what I do or John does or Dr. Acton or any of us all together, any of the legislature, anything, that this is not going to come back quickly. But we've got to give businesses a chance to do that. At the same time, we've got to give people the chance to go out. And we are on a pathway, a very good pathway, and a responsible pathway to do that.